Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I guess we're at evening now, aren't we? Well, it depends on where we are. Christy, you're in the afternoon, and the rest of us are in the evening. So there we go. Welcome to Images 2021 Discussion with the Jurors. We've been so excited and waiting for this to come along. We're so thrilled it's finally here tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Glad to see we have folks over in Facebook as well as here on the webinar. Folks, tonight's a Q&A toward the end. If you have anything you want to say, start throwing them in the Q&A, and Facebook, go ahead and ask them there, and those questions will come to me as well. So later on in the program, we'll get a chance to ask questions of these folks. So get ready. Anyway, my name is Eric Dillner, and I'm the CEO of the Shoreline Arts Alliance, and we've had an extraordinary month, thanks to all of you fantastic photographers. We have several things planned for you tonight. The main event is looking into the minds of these fantastic jurors. And the other is that tonight we will announce the Audience Choice Award. So you've got about 10, 15 minutes here to make that last vote if you'd like. We'll be closing that just after the kind of our opening remarks and from each of our jurors, and then we'll present it at the end of the evening. So give us a little time to get it set. So be sure to get your last votes in. So tonight is celebrating Shoreline Arts Alliance 40 years as your arts council. In the past 11 months, unlike most organizations, we've grown exponentially, from re-envisioning and producing important exhibits like Images, to offering scholarships, to sending young artists to college, to building careers in the nonprofit world, and now celebrating a new collaboration with the Yale School of Public Health, where we host a webinar series with the Dean of Yale School of Public Health to explore common challenges of reopening the arts industry, offer practical scientific-based advice, and offer aid in rebuilding consumer confidence. As artists and arts lovers, this partnership was built for you. I encourage you to view these webinars on our website at shorelinearts.org. You'll be joining over 11,000 arts leaders from across the country who've learned an extraordinary amount from these webinars. So you don't want to miss them. So check them out on www.shorelinearts.org. Images was created in Shoreline Arts Alliance's founding year to celebrate the gift of the photographer. It's grown over the years thanks to our dedicated volunteers, you the photographers, and our extraordinary opportunity to pull in these spectacular jurors. I encourage you to really explore our online gallery again after tonight and take a look at the artist statements, look at the art from maybe a different perspective than what you saw before, after we hear a little bit about how to look a little more deeply into some art. Again, I want to thank you all who voted and are voting right now for the Audience Choice Award. Not only is this helping you choose the Audience Choice Award, but you're also supporting a fund which offers artists free submission in these tough times. So that $5 makes a big difference. So we really appreciate you doing that. And again, thanks for being here tonight. These spectacular jurors viewed over 850 images that were submitted by you spectacular artists out there in Connecticut. These three remarkable jurors use their talent and respect. They have amazing authority in the world of photographer. So the amount of time they put into this was extraordinary. They took great care to review each and every piece. And it took them over 4 days to make the selections for the show. So tonight, I'd like to introduce you to one of our spectacular jurors. Her name is Sebilla Smith. Sebilla is a creator of 28 exhibitions featuring over 110 international photographers. Sebilla provides context for an expansive array of image-based work. Her concept-aware curriculum provides a unique concept development framework which strengthens creative practice. She believes visual culture creates social change by amplifying the visual narrative and fostering collaborations across disciplines. I've asked Sebilla to share a little more about herself and her journey.
Thank you for the opportunity. As I have mentioned before, I have been called a glutton for image consumption, and 800 plus images is actually something I find really fun to do, is to go through and cull. I look at images and have been involved in visual culture in one way or another with photography for 20 plus years. As an independent curator, I have the opportunity to do what I call making art with art. I come to the printed image and other people's artwork and then blend a narrative. And it can be very exciting. What you're seeing on the screen right now was a call for entry for the Rhode Island Center for Photographic Arts. And in this case, I was given the opportunity to have a theme or subject matter, and that's always fun and playful for me. And what I chose was to paraphrase an E.E. Cummings poem that talks about for every mile the feet go, the heart goes 9. That's the last line in that poem. And I think that that's the same for your eye. And so I decided to create my call for entry was called The Heart Goes 9. And it was wonderful because we were able to pull in people from different parts of the world. Someone flew in actually from Germany just for the opening. And what you're seeing are two of the people that we awarded, because there is in their system as well an ability to choose. But the synergy in a group show is extremely fun, and one of the reasons why I love doing them. That's why you hear I've worked with over 100 artists. I have a propensity for group shows. I think if you want to go to the next slide, I was able to do 4 shows last year, which was helpful because I did this one in January or February, and then I think there might be a slide with the ones that I did together in Utah.
I see another slide. Yours, so
Interesting.
sorry
That's
about
interesting. Okay, there were actually a few more slides, but what I will do is send you to my website to see it, and I'll
Okay,
just
perfect.
briefly talk about them. So the second group I had the opportunity to work with a client as a consultant that I'd not ever seen her work. We got involved in her work. It was very realized, and I was asked to let a few galleries that I work with know that I thought there was some really interesting work. And it turned into not only did I was able to curate an individual show for this artist, Carrie Lane, the art center that I was working with, which is in Utah, called the Granary Art Center, which is, I call them the Marfa of Utah because they are exceedingly known within the state and people visit from all over, though it's very rural where it's based. So I was bringing one exhibit to the art center, and because it has a structure where the second floor is open, they asked if I had any other work that could be in conversation. And I was able to bring Adama Delphine Fawundu's work, which is on the African diaspora and on belonging. So I had one body of work called Rhizome Remains and the other one called Tingoy, which is a Mende river goddess. And what makes me so excited, this was actually the last trip I took was to Utah to open those 2 shows, is to introduce ideas and work to people that don't normally get exposed to it. So we had a reading list that was literally 4 pages for Tingoy because we were introducing the African diaspora to a very rural, mostly Mormon culture. And lastly, I'll mention the Journal Collective, which you can look up on Instagram, which grew out of the pandemic. And it is a collaborative of women photographers all over the world that now has broken up into 45 different groups in different geographic configurations, and they by consensus put up exhibitions on Instagram. It was wonderful to be asked to be a curator for their exhibition, which the theme I had was called Cycle, and that came out in August, September. So those are the ones that I would refer you to my website to look at. And last, I would say concept aware is something I do teach. Usually I went and taught, but now I do some things virtually. And once a month, I do a very broad brush, super condensed version. And the other thing that grew out of the last year was a photo book group that would have been held in my studio in Somerville that went online and consequently has reached 4 continents, which was not expected, and it just grew organically. So we're celebrating the 1 year of that. It was March 19th that the first book group happened. And so we're doing a revisit of that on my website. So all that is available there. And that's the kind of work that, even though we weren't able to be in person, we still got to share art. So that was an exciting part of the past year.
So Johnny, we're going to talk about Johnny Chapman. He's our next juror, and he is a Californian lens-based artist currently residing in New York. He holds an MFA in photography, video, and related media from the School of Visual Arts in New York. Johnny's work has been featured in exhibitions across the United States, including in the Franco Gallery, Here Arts, and SF Camera Work. His work can be found in many private and public collections, including at the Fig Art Museum and San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. He is also the founder and curator of Terms and Conditions, an avant-garde film screening series. Johnny, we're just absolutely honored to have you here tonight. So Johnny, please tell us a little bit more about you, and I'll bring up the slide that we have for you.
Thank you for that introduction. I want to start off first by saying thank you to Eric and Whitney for organizing this and bringing us all together. This has been a really nice experience. So as mentioned, my name is Johnny Chapman, and I'm a lens-based artist from California. My work, in terms of my practice, often revolves around ideas and notions of landscape and its relationship with Black history, and also with looking at the digital image as an object where data is used as material. My work has been in a lot of exhibitions, and I've been fortunate to have it in some private and public museum collections. Next month, I will be having a solo exhibition at Blue Sky Gallery in Portland of the work that you're seeing here. And then, as mentioned, I am the founder of and one of the curators of Terms and Conditions, which is an experimental film screening series that I started back in 2017. And working with other artists and curators, we host screenings and occasionally exhibitions featuring a wide range of artists from around the world. And in the past year, we've been fortunate to be able to showcase work by artists like Wilbur Healy, Marnie Weber, Liz Zito, Jen Liu, Erica Beckman, just to name a few. And we'll be having another screening series in the coming months. So I just want to say thank you again for having me. It's been wonderful to look at all of your work.
Thank you, Johnny. Well, and last but not least, of course, is our juror all the way from Colorado, and Christy Odom. I found this on her website, so I just had to read it to you all. When she was 16 years old, Christy picked up her grandfather's camera and fell in love with the beauty of the natural world. Ever since, she's been driven to capture what's real, raw, and compelling about the world. Christy Odom is an internationally acclaimed photographer, filmmaker, and sought-after motivational speaker. Christy focuses on connecting people emotionally to animals and celebrating those who have a connection to the natural world, which you're going to see here in a minute. Her accolades include over 60 international photography awards, including 2 Nature's Best Photography Awards, which exhibited her images at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Her work has appeared either online or in print for National Geographic, Forbes, Rolling Stone, Microsoft, Outside Magazine, and I'm sure so many more. Christy, we are so thrilled you're here with us tonight. We'd love to hear a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm so honored to be here amongst Johnny. Your work is fantastic. I've loved looking at it throughout this process, and I'm a fan. And Sebilla, I loved you ever since I met you. She was a reviewer of mine years and years ago at a portfolio review. And then I was able to continue that relationship and get her to help consult me when I needed it. And so I'm honored to be amongst so much talent. And I'm just honored to see all you guys' images, sharing your passions and your loves and your visions with us. It was an absolute honor looking at all 850 of those images. My mission and my goal has always been to use photography to connect people emotionally to animals, to show that animals have their own characters and personalities and feelings so that people stop objectifying animals. I do a lot of conservation work. One of my last conservation stories focused on a group of senior citizens that meet every Friday to count bugs and the citizen science approach to how that can help better our environment is a huge story. And these guys have records of insects that show declining insect populations. It also shows the depth of biodiversity in local parks. And that was my first article that was picked up and published online for National Geographic, which I was pretty excited to have a natural history story close to home. And that's what broke me into the National Geographic circle. So I was really excited about that. And yeah, go out and tell stories and share more images. Connect with me on Instagram. It's just at Christy Odom, my name. I'd love to see more of your work. And thank you all for sharing and entering this competition. And thank you, Eric, for the time and for setting this all up and bringing us all together.
Thank you. We're just so thrilled to have you all here tonight. It's great. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring all of our friends to the screen here and do just what we called this, a juror discussion. So I leave it to you all. They made this huge list of all the things they want to talk about tonight with you. And so I'd say just let's launch away. Sebilla, I know you and I talked a little bit most recently. Where should we start?
Well, I think I like to start by saying whenever we're looking at work, and I know that we discuss this as a group of jurors, putting your work out there, regardless of what the theme is courageous. It's a vulnerability. And I think I was especially aware how respectfully each of the jurors came to the work with that. So I want to start with that congratulations and kudos, because it's an intimate process, and then you're sharing it, asking for critique. And so making it is bold, asking for critique is bold, and we really respect that. So that's number one. Number two is there's no one way or right way to interpret a photograph. And I think that one of the things that we spoke about is how we each interpret fun in a jury process. When you in a group, you get to see, like, Johnny will see something I didn't, and Christy will be picking out something I wouldn't have thought of, and we make a better selection because we're all seeing with more eyes and reflecting that which we look at. So I'd like to start with the fact that you're to be commended for putting your pieces in. And one of the ways that we juried was combing through and thinking and then looking back again. And so there's a few things I think that our list came out so long because as we were sussing out why this one over this one, it would bring out those issues. So some of them are, we talked about a lot about keeping your eye moving through a photograph. One of the things, and I'll open it up to my other jurors, but I talk a lot in my work about an impactful image and what makes an impactful image. And we can unpack that here because there's a lot of things that make an impactful image. And it's really challenging to hit all those different notes. And one of the things is if you're looking at an image, is all the information or all the visual aspects of it giving us information? So sometimes we can, as a maker, we can focus on, oh, I got an expression, or that we got one piece, but we're going to be looking at a lot of other pieces. Even something as specific as where does the figure in the landscape break the plane of the landscape? So what would you two like to add to that in terms of the idea of what makes an impactful image? I guess maybe that's a good place to start.
I want to back up just a little bit, if that's all right, and talk
Sure.
about where, one of the reasons I love entering competitions, and one of the reasons I enter competitions is to get critical feedback and for growth. Because I find that nowadays as photographers, you put an image online on Instagram or Facebook and you get a lot of false praise. You get a lot of people that'll tell you, oh my God, that's beautiful, that's amazing, when there's a lot of flaws. So for me, I was craving that sort of technical advice so that I can increase my skill level. And I started entering competitions for growth. So things that we say here today, and like it will, sometimes the critique is hard, but at the same time, I applaud you guys all for taking that step for growth.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing I would add is that competitions, like I feel like people should be strategic with what they enter and how they enter, because it's a great way to test out. Like if you have questions about certain series, questions about certain work, it's a great way to get a gauge on how that is being received. And also to test out, your elevator pitch, because this is going to be the first time that we've met you, we've seen your work. And this is the chance to test that out and to see what's working, what's being responded to, what isn't. And so I commend everyone who put their foot forward. And I would also say that although we're going to give lots of feedback today, do not try to tailor your work to what we're saying, because that'll always be this kind of losing battle, because our own likes and interests will change, as will yours. And so you really want to pursue your own unique vision and then enter that rather than trying to tailor that to what you think the judges might like.
Speaking of using competitions as a way of growth, I'd love to hear from the other two jurors if there are other suggestions that you guys give to this audience to where to get critical feedback for growth.
Well, I would say, first, like being an artist or being a creative, and so you have to acknowledge that you're like within a community. And one of the first steps of that is finding out different ways to engage, whether that is going to your local, art walk on a Friday when things are open again, checking out Instagram feeds for galleries and seeing what artists are in your area, whether it's taking classes, going to community college and taking like a photography class just to meet other like-minded individuals. And then also competitions, going to events that do portfolio reviews and things like that, are all kind of helpful places to look at.
Absolutely. What I would add to that, I have to write it down because you're making me think of too many things at the same time. But to back up to what Johnny said about your unique vision, I talk about this a lot, is that you need to be in conversation with your work, and your curiosity is the sweet spot. And if you are experimenting and playing and pleased by that, it will imbue the image with that energy. And you cannot please everyone. And all I want to say is please yourself and follow that, because that's where the spark is. And you will never figure out trends, and you will never figure out what's in a juror's head. And frankly, that's not the way to focus. Like I talk often again about the process is where to focus, and the product will take care of itself. So all those suggestions that Johnny said in terms of strengthening your skill set, you really want to be part of a community, because this is not fun to do alone, and it isn't alone. It's a really rich community. We grow from each other. We do cheerlead each other. We are learning all the time. Photography is such a nimble and changing landscape right now, but you can find where you fit in yours. A lot of local things that you should be having your ear to the ground is the nonprofits in your area that support the arts, like the one that we're in, and other places that exhibit. Do that regionally, do that in other parts of the world, really, that might be following the kind of photography that you like to do. There's a lot of online competitions, and portfolio reviews are the place to really get a lot of feedback. And it's kind of, I always feel for the reviewees, because you are putting yourself out there. And if you're in a room with 10 people, you're probably going to get 8 different opinions. And that's okay, because it basically kind of gets you into the place where you stand by your work. Like, you need to be open to listen, but you're not there to please everyone. You're there to take what helps you see more clearly, and still hold on to your vision. So it does strengthen your elevator pitch, which is really important. There is going to be an expectation that you're able to articulate what is going on for you in your process. So portfolio reviews are a great place to make that start.
One of the things that you said, Sebilla, that I
Thinking.
think about over and over is you use the word impact. And I think that that's one of the things that I think of most when I'm a judge for a competition. So all you guys out there, think about the fact that we went through 850 images. So think about what's going to make you stop if you just go through that many images. Like, look for an image that doesn't look like one that maybe won the year before or anything like that, something that we've seen, but try to find an image that will make somebody stop out of 850 images. That word impact is the first word that comes to mind whenever I'm judging. What makes me stop?
There's also a lot of education right now, especially because we are global and virtual. I was just listening to Mona Kuhn, who does beautiful work on intersection of body and landscape. And one of her latest books, it's called Mona Kuhn Works. And she was talking about her creative practice, and people are very generous about that, even on websites, but also on these interviews that are happening. And I loved what she talked about when she's making the work, and when she knows she's onto something, she's like, I levitate. And I loved that, right? Like, everybody has like a visceral experience when you're making work, when you know you're onto something. And, you know, if she's going to levitate, then probably some other people viewing it are going to too. So you need to be engaged in that.
Another thing that I think was beautiful that was mentioned is composition. Have you guys ever gone somewhere and looked at an image and noticed that your eye just sticks? And then sometimes when you're looking at another photo or a piece of art, like your eye just escapes the screen or escapes the work. You want to use lighting, composition, everything you can to move a person's eye around that frame and trap their eye inside. And the better photographers are the ones that can use shapes and geometry and use different things to narrate and to control the eye movement of the viewer. It's a very, very hard exercise. One of the things that I try to teach people how to do is to become aware of your eye movements, so that when you're taking a photo, you can actually see what subject, what's drawing your eye, where it's moving to. And a lot of the things that I do is I actually give people assignments to look at famous pieces of arts and draw their eye movement, so they can start becoming more and more aware of it, to make it subconscious, so that when you're taking photos, you actually understand a bit more of movement. There are a lot of tricks that people use. Sometimes, like, what's the old trick where you flip your image upside down to see if there's hot spots or things that draw you around in a different way. But composition is the main thing that I see that people can improve on. And the main thing that that's the first thing I teach in any of my classes is composition, and how to use geometric composition, and how to really pull people in. And to, like, if you can get a spiral in, like using the Fibonacci eye movement, that's like the ultimate goal, because people are really drawn to the golden ratio and movement into your subject that way. It's a little abstract and a lot to take on, but I want to plant that seed that you start looking for the way your eye moves when you're looking through the frame and when you're looking through images. Do you guys have something to add to that? I'm rambling here.
Well, I would actually tie that into the conversation over impact, because I think together they come together to really talk about what is the artist's intention. And I think that was one of the big thing as we were going through 800 plus images, was you can tell who took 1 second to think about what they were taking an image of, and then paused in order to assess if maybe there's a different way to capture that image, maybe a different way to frame it, maybe to think about moving something out of the shot to make it cleaner. So you could really tell intention of people who wanted to tell stories, who weren't just pointing a camera, but we're using that as a tool to have a conversation. And so ultimately it comes down to, what are you trying to show us? Is it to point to say this is a thing? Or is it to have this other conversation that this is only one element of? And that sometimes kind of differentiates the work, where we see, for instance, a sunset. It's quite common topic, quite common trope in photography, but there's ways to make it unique to yourself, to make it more impactful, to give it that kind of unique perspective that really helps it to stand apart when we see maybe like 30 sunset images within a body. And so really thinking about like, what can you do different? Is it, do you stand 10 feet to the right? Do you turn around? Do you flip the photograph upside down? Do you actually not take a photograph of the sunset and actually think about the concept of a sunset? So then you break it down to elements and you take shots of the shadows. You're looking at the light on skin and how the gold light changes the way that we look or the way that things are represented. So there's a lot of different ways to go about that. And I would love for everyone to like try it and experiment, and to just like, when you see like a moment, you're like, I need to get a photo of this, to think about what other ways are there to take that shot.
Johnny, I love what you said, photographing with intent. Like, I think that that's just beautiful. When I'm taking a photograph, I ask myself 3 questions. What do I see? What's the subject that's in front of me? May it be bird in the tree? What do I feel? Is it chaos? Is it overwhelm? Is it simplicity? And how can I use that? What do I feel in the image? Do I want to use a slower shutter speed to show chaos? Do I want to use a color palette that shows simplicity? Like, the what do I feel and how can I put that in the narrative is important. And the third question is, what can I eliminate? Because it could be a dead leaf in the background that's going to distract the image. So how can I stand to get rid of those eliminations? So I'm always asking myself, what do I see? What do I feel? And what can I eliminate whenever I'm taking a photograph?
That is so helpful to know. It's ironic what I do in Concept Aware. A tag that I have is how you see and why it matters. Because you are the camera. It's going through your brain, it's going through your memories, it's going through your experience. And how do you use that and become aware? Because that's what changes it. It literally, awareness changes the level at which you can make impactful images, and all these things that we're asking you to think about are important. I mean, the why it matters part in my questioning is about intention. And it's really important to play and to experiment. As much as we talked about how vulnerable it is to make work, we also have to be a little capable of letting it go and not constrict ourselves, because there are so many wonderful things found in what you may initially think is a mistake, or you're laying limitation on yourself. I often give this example, and it's so true that it just keeps coming up. But I worked with a commercial photographer who had a successful studio for 20 years, and in our discussion in Concept Aware class about how you see and why it matters, in his head he had the notion that a portrait is eye contact, you and your subject. What? Do you know how many look at the portraits that Johnny took, the self-portraits that we just saw. There's no contact, and those are extremely impactful images. How about people that we've seen and we remember the image and we're not even seeing a face, but potentially their profile from the back. So that limitation that person wasn't aware of was impacting his work profoundly. So I really drill in a lot about kind of silent limitations that we're walking around with. And that really the answer is this awareness and the playful pushing it. I like to do something where if I work with someone either in class or individually, and they are very clearly identified with a geometric palette in pastels, I'm going to ask them to go do some urban street photography, or I'm going to make you go out of what you normally see, because even playing in other genres and feeling like a beginner is perfect, because you're going to take that lesson and bring it back to what you do on a more intentional, or go back in your comfort zone. I'm really big about going outside your comfort zone.
We have a question that actually came in that's right along the subject that you guys are talking about right now, so I'm just going to throw it at you. What do you think of Dorothea Lange's advice? A photographer needs a point of departure.
That's a great question. And actually, isn't that another way of saying awareness? That point of departure is being aware of who you are, whose story you're telling, why you're telling it, how you're telling it. One of the things to know about Dorothea Lange is how she interviewed her subjects, how she titled her work that reflected the relationship she developed with the subjects that she photographed. Interestingly, and I'm going to ask the other jurors to weigh in on this particular question, but if we could circle back to the creative choices that you make. And one of the things that you can do is look at other people's work and break down what are some of the creative choices they made.
I would also add that in seeing a lot of work, you begin to see the full spectrum of kind of the way in which people see the world. And that gives you a chance to place yourself of where you think you see, where you think you see the world. And to figure out like what is your unique perspective, like what are the things that kind of got you to this point that shape how you see the world and how you interact with it. And that also then becomes a place where you can then detach. So like when I was in school, there was a commercial artist named Eric Almas, and he talked a lot about figuring out what is your toolbox. So like what are the elements and the things that you like, you enjoy, the things that you always kind of come back to when you look at art, when you look at work. And this may come all the way down to a certain color palette, a certain tonality of light, figuring out all those things in order to better serve the work going forward. But in order to do that, you have to experiment with everything so that you can get to the point of saying, this is what I like. Because there's a lot of undisciplined image makers, people who love to create work, but don't necessarily know why, or have the kind of unique perspective of their own behind it. They're just creating. And as they continue to make more work, to read, to look at like philosophy, critical theory, to listen to podcasts of other artists talking about their work, they begin to develop the vocabulary that is unique to themselves about how they express themselves. How about you, Christy?
I think you guys have hit the nail on the head there. I think that one of the things that I push for is that for people to kind of put together a mission statement and know their purpose. Like I lead always on my website, my bio, everything I do with my goal is to connect people emotionally to wildlife and to celebrate those with a connection to the natural world. And I say that over and over. And that's one of the ways that I've helped develop a style and a voice, is by putting that at the core of everything that I do, in the core of my images. So a fun exercise is to sit down and say, what are my goals? Like might be, I want my family to see themselves as beautiful as I see them, or I want to celebrate my garden. It doesn't have to be something big, but a lot of times, like I find that photographers that have direction have this center core that is what drives them, which I think is a little bit about what that quote is, and that direction and what we're talking about here. So I think it's a fun little exercise to write down your goals and your mission statement.
So Christy, you actually you brought you're segueing these great questions right in for me. One of the folks asked if you all, when you judge the work, if you were reviewing the artist statements as you reviewed the images, which we know you did not. You did not review them. So then the secondary question was, so did you just judge it on its own merit? And I think you spoke to that, but if you have anything further you want to share, that please do. No.
Well,
I
no,
love-
actually, go ahead, Christy.
I love that we judge the image based on the impact that the image was giving it themselves. So I'm actually really happy we weren't judging it based on words or mission statements or anything like that. But I think that mission statement in your head can work through as a direction and as a core in your images, and maybe help put your feelings and your heart into your work. So keep the mission statements, but we don't look at them. We're looking at the quality of the image. Or the impact of the image. The impact of the image.
The other thing that you all asked me to do, and I'm going to try it right now, is to share some of the pieces that you all kind of pulled out for us to use in the background. So unfortunately, what it does is it pulls you. You're only going to now be visible when you speak, the four of you, or the three of you, four of us. But we want to see these slides go through a little bit as you speak. So don't hesitate to keep going.
Okay, I just want to respond to a couple of things. One is, yeah, I love that what we're seeing is it gives the flavor for the gamut of the themes that we were seeing, and just the broad spectrum. Because I think it's really helpful to understand when you are jurying just how wide a pool you could be in. What I wanted to talk about was just that in terms of artist statements, there's nothing you're going to say in an artist statement that's going to improve your image. So yeah, it has to stand on its own, and that's kind of where we went. That said, your artist statement is important and needs to ring true for the intentionality that Johnny was speaking about, and the impact and mission statement that Christy is talking about. And it's that awareness that if you do some of the thinking and educating yourself in where do I fit in the landscape of photography, like where is my departure point, if you were going to go back to Dorothea Lange. And the other thing that I wondered or wanted to talk about or bring up is this idea that you learn as much from your aversions as you do from your attractions. And so it's a really good tool to play in that sandbox. Just put yourself in there, because it comes back and feeds your work. And another tool visually is to get feedback from people, and not necessarily artists, on work. It was really funny. Group of friends from college, and none of them are in the arts, and one of them said, I have to talk to you about your Instagram, because you put up things that scare me. And it was fabulous that was her response, right? And she really wanted to understand, like, what was impactful. Why would I herald this particular artist? And so it's that idea that you can take your images and ask for not even critique, but just visual vocabulary, like put out a few and ask other people, what is the impact for them? Because you'll be surprised. I mean, one of the ideas is you make the image and then it has a life of its own. You really have no control over what someone's response or impact or what it's going to pull out for them. So yeah, I think that's why people get together in crit groups with other artists. But I think it's really good to go outside of other artists. It's great to ask kids and people not in the arts what their feedback is.
Love that. Asking kids. I never even thought about that. That's brilliant.
They are pretty honest.
It is so cool.
They'll tell you how it is.
They'll tell you how it is. That's right.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, I'd like to mention a couple of the things where I feel that some of you guys that enter the competition were working against yourself and limiting your odds. So there were a couple of mistakes that we noticed as judges. One of the things is, because we are looking for impact and originality, if you have a series of images that's the same subject that looks the same, I might vote the first one in, but not the second, third, fourth, because I've seen it before. And Johnny might vote the third one in. And so people that were doing series of images, like there were a lot that did the abstractions or found objects, or, but there would be a whole series of them. And a lot of those images that were strong enough to be put in the show weren't put on the show because you were working against yourself. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, I think you did. Because I was actually going to jump in to say almost just that, which was that tying into what Sebilla was talking about, which was that to be strategic with what you are entering into competitions and things like this. Because we spent a lot of time reviewing work, but I have juried competitions before where we went through people's work within 45 seconds. And it was very much a hit or miss thing. And so when you're working in a series and you're going to submit that to a competition, you need to think about what images you like versus what images maybe represent the series stronger. Because sometimes those things don't always correlate. And so in what Christy was talking about, there may have been other work from that series that you maybe weren't as invested in, but that might be better at showing the fuller range of the actual series. So then you're not working against yourself. And I would also add that when it comes to submitting, be careful with submitting the same image that has been edited different ways, because you take a little bit of the suspense and mystery away. And then as jurors, if we don't like how it was edited, we now have a choice and we may say no to none of the options. Rather, if you only give us one option, then that's what we have to go with.
Yeah, also for me I've run a few juries where I've invited other people to jury with me, and we've had the kind of discussions that we were able to have, because not every jurying process is the same, and this one was where the three of us could exchange ideas of why we liked particular images or when we had problems with particular images that frankly the other two might have voted for. So it was this whole process. But as a person, when I am jurying, I want to see a sequence. I want to be brought into a narrative. And so something that repeats is not going to be helpful. And one of the other things that often happens, and I can't actually think of this happening particularly in what we looked at from what you have submitted, where I get all excited because I see this first image and I'm like, wow, I'm going to love this. And then the person like does this to me, zoop, like great image, okay, not great. And it's like, you don't want that arc. You actually really want to start strong and have a handle on how you're bringing your viewer through that. So your sequence can make or break what gets voted upon, frankly.
So is it? I'm gonna throw a question of my own in here since I'm learning about this with you all. So when you judge something that's blind like this competition, you don't necessarily know that it's the same photographer who took any of the same pieces unless they tell you, right? By presenting pieces that are all similar. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, in this particular one, for instance, if they were all in a particular location, for instance, this image that's up on the screen right now, there were other images taken by this photographer also in a similar landscape. So we are going to pull out one image. We obviously knew that was the same photographer, but in other ways, and this is where you have to investigate how you're being seen. If you are asked for 5 images or 10 images, it is helpful, as Johnny was saying, to be aware of what you're putting into that particular series and why, and that it holds together as an entry. Like you wouldn't want to say, here are my 5 disparate shots, but they're super, these are my favorite images of what I've taken. There needs to be some intentionality in this sequencing.
So we just had another question come in that said, how do the titles affect your judging? Now, of course, we did it blind once again, so you all didn't see the titles, but if you were given the titles.
Oh, goodness.
thing on my part, I can tell you. Okay, I'm just going to jump in and say, I don't need you to tell me what's in the image, right? And I don't need you to be cute or give me something that I need a thesaurus to actually understand what you're doing. It really needs to be organic, and it can be playful, and it should have something to do with the intention of things and kind of what else is going on. I'll give you two quick things. Mentioning something untitled makes it very difficult to find it, right? Like even if it's Untitled 1 versus Untitled 2, 3, 4, that can make sense in a series. But that's one of those creative choices. It isn't just an afterthought. The more that you can bake into every choice you're making, the actual intention that we've all been talking about, the stronger your presentation will be. So think about your titles, think about that creative choice, think about, all those layers of how do you ultimately see an image? How is that object? And what about the work means that it should be presented this way? Not everything deserves a mat or to be behind glass. All those layers need to be thought of through the frame of the intention of your images. Sorry, super opinionated. I jump right in there. It's like,
That's great.
You were the perfect one to answer that one. I was happy to pass that one on to you.
oh, yeah.
I think I would add that the image, the title, and the statement, those are each like different doorways for a viewer to enter your work. And
Great.
so if you start with like 2 of the 3 doors closed, there's less chances for us to really get into your work. And so you have to think about how these elements work together to tell your story, and then how they can work separated. So like thinking about when you're entering a competition, we may not view the title, we may not view the statement. So then how does the work stand on its own versus when you're in an exhibition, the title matters, the statement matters, because that lets us, the viewer, know more about you as an artist, where you're coming from, and maybe in some cases, the symbols that we may not know. You kind of let us into that. And so thinking about how these different elements work together and not making them so esoteric that we don't know what it's referencing is kind of key in figuring out how these work together to benefit your work.
So you guys are fantastic. I love it. So what I would love to do now is take a little moment and share the Audience Choice Award, do a little commercial, I'll say, and then come back to each of you to kind of wrap up your thoughts. If there's any particular photo that you'd like me to draw up that was in that slide reel to talk about it, feel free. But the what is fine art photography, I can't get enough of that answer. It's still something that I need to learn more about. I shouldn't put ideas in your head, but if you don't mind, we'll come back to you in just a second. So what I'm going to do here is pull up well, first of all, while I'm doing this, I want to say thank you so much to our sponsors. We can't thank them enough for all that they have done. We have a lot of program sponsors that unfortunately during this pandemic have not been able to come to the fore with us this year, but we have our sustaining sponsors who've helped us tremendously this year. So I want to thank all of them very much for that. And I'm going to show you a little picture of all of those folks while I talk about Connecticut Hospice. We're going to tomorrow, our committee of Images folks who are so extraordinary are getting together tomorrow to figure out how we can turn much of the show into a live show for the families and the hospice, the folks at Connecticut Hospice, which I think is extraordinary. And so we've done this every year for forever, but with it not being a virtual, for it being a virtual show, we know that many artists may not have actually printed their work yet. So we're actually thinking this might be a month from now that we actually do that. Of course, you'd have a choice as an artist to be in the show or not. So I'm thrilled that that this is happening. We are taking the entire exhibit and putting it on a loop in all of the rooms for the patients. So that's pretty spectacular. So again, thank you to all those sponsors. I want to thank, this is the committee that's meeting tomorrow. We want to thank them, Lynn, again, for leading this and taking such a load off of the staff and doing so much work for us. We so appreciate your team. Thank you so much. And my board of directors, we had our board meeting this morning and everybody's happy, and that's good. So we're moving forward. And I just, again, want to thank them, because without them, none of this could really be happening. So thank you all. And are you ready for the Audience Choice Award winner 2021? Fall Grasses by Isabel Chenoweth. So there you are. Congratulations, Isabel, and thank you so much for everybody who voted. Yeah, you can't see them, but all the jurors are clapping their hands wildly. They're dancing around, thinking it's a great choice. So there you go. Good. Let me share that. And so, Isabel, next year you're welcome to join be in the show. No submission fee. We just want you to not be in the show, but we want you to submit your work next year, submission free. So up to 10 pieces of art. So there you go. All right, so I think we're back to all our friends here. I really don't want this evening to end, so take as much time as you want, because I'm having so much fun. But why don't we change it up here, Johnny? How about you start that for us?
What would you like me to start?
Why don't you share a little bit, just wrap up what you think this whole experience was for you, for these artists. Anything you just want to just add to the table here. We know how much Whitney shared so much. Whitney, who helped manage all this, she shared how much care you all took in jurying this work, and so it obviously meant a lot to you as you all went through this. I think my public knows that we basically gave you enough money to go to Starbucks as a fee. It wasn't, you did this out of love and care for for these artists. So I'm really just opening it up to say, we'd love to hear a little bit more from you before we go tonight.
Cool. So I would say it was really nice seeing everyone's work and the explorations that were coming out. A lot of the work made me want to see more, which is great. Want to see more of your experimentations, your use of alternative processing, the rest of the series, just to see how your thought concluded. And so I say, keep submitting work, keep putting it out there, because we will all be doing other things and you never know where we will be. So keep putting your work out there.
Wonderful. Sebilla, do you want to go next?
Sure. No, I would underscore that. And it's like, in my jurying process, it was really fun, and I learned from listening to Christy and Johnny's interpretation. So there are no experts, there's just a lot of expansion. So be really open to all that you hear, but keep your ear to the conversation of your own work. And what was that, the departure? Really think about what is your departure and what's your intention.
Wonderful. That leaves you, Christy.
Oh my gosh. I will say the one thing I really think I'm a master of is I'm a master of failing. I tend to start each week with, I want to throw 5 things out there that are impossible. I'm going to shoot for the stars on 5 occasions. And every once in a while, I'll grab one. I fail more than anyone I know. But one of the things, like there was one year that I did really well in competitions. I had 8 wins. So I went back and I looked to see how many images I had entered that year. It was 147 images. So for those 8 wins, I had 139 failures. So even if you didn't get the result you're looking for today, I take you through this competition I encourage you, like the people that are successful are the ones that can go past failure and the ones that can see, well, what can I do next time that'll maybe make the judge stop? And it might have just been us. Your work could be award-winning in a different competition. So don't let a negative, what you didn't expect out of this competition to define you at all. Like embrace that failure and move on. Not to say, I shouldn't say it's failure, embrace that. I hate that word, but I feel like one of the reasons that I've opened a lot of my doors is because I keep knocking on doors that I think are impossible. And I think that that's such a big growing opportunity. So big kudos to everyone that entered. And it was lovely to see your work and your passions and connect with us, like reach out with us. Like a lot of the photo industry is about building your network, and we are so honored to have been part of your network in this process. So find us on social media, subscribe to our newsletters, things like that, and build a relationship and email us and show us more of your work. And thank you guys all for your time today.
Oh, thank you. And your insight today, just for the novice like myself, was just unbelievable. And I'm hoping for those who are these spectacular photographers around who were here today loved it as well. I'm sure they did. So thank you again. You guys have done yeoman's work and then some and then some and then some, and I just can't even begin to express how much we appreciate it. We hope someday there's a time where we can fly you out here from New York, from Massachusetts, from Colorado, and you all can be in one place together, and we can do this. Where somebody said today, what we all need to do is be able to hug each other, and I think we're sending big hugs to you guys. Thanks for being here, and we hope we can do that in person one day. So again, have a fantastic the rest of the evening, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon. Take care. Bye-bye.